Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. I'm back with another video for you for your 2020 fantasy football drafts. This time is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to talk to you about players that I do not think you should draft. And I'm not just giving you a random list of all the players that everybody else has said, I don't like this guy, I don't like this guy, I don't like this guy. I'm doing it a little bit different. I went round by round for the first 10 rounds of ADP. And I've picked one player at each round where I am most definitely drafting players that are lower than him by ADP in that round. So for me, that makes that player a do not draft player. So if somebody has an ADP of 37, they're a fourth round draft pick. But if I'm picking guys with an ADP of 42, 43 above them, I'm never drafting that guy. I don't think you should either. And there's very reasonable decisions that you should be making that force you to fade that player at their current price. Now, some of these players are going to drop an ADP, which might make them more palatable as, we got 2 weeks until the season kicks off. So if some of these guys drop drastically because a lot of people are putting them on their do not draft lists, obviously, as the price changes, my opinion changes, because there is some point where there's a nexus between the value that the player has that they're going to bring to you statistically and what their value is versus ADP. I'm looking for profit for the price. And right now, the 10 guys that I've listed do not provide that for the price that they're at. Let's get right to the list. But before I do, I want to ask you guys, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Make sure you ring that notifications bell. If you're back, I appreciate you. Leave me the guys in the comments that you think are your do not draft players for 2020. Make sure you drop a like on the video before you go. In the first round, man, this one's going to cause a whole lot of controversy because everybody in the first round is flipping good, okay? So, don't get after me because you see the name Dalvin Cook above my head and Al says never draft Dalvin Cook. My issue is his ADP is at 6.5. Adam Schefter tweeted out last week the same thing that I have been talking about all summer, and that this dude does not have a contract. And Schefter tweeted if he does not have a contract by the time week 1 gets here, he would have a lot of reservations about drafting Dalvin Cook because he has been to camp, so he's satisfied his contractual obligation. He can then hold out during the season and then show up later in the season and collect his full paycheck, earn his entire year of service, and become a free agent next year, not unlike somebody like Melvin Gordon. The last thing that you want when you spend a first-round draft pick on somebody is to have a possibility that they could reasonably sit out the first month to 2 months of the season. We saw it 2 years ago with Le'Veon Bell, who sat out the whole season. Should have come back in week 11. That's a whole other story. Or we saw it last year with Melvin Gordon. No, these running backs don't have a lot of leverage, but yes, they are saving their bodies and try and get to that free agent contract. The best way to do it, sit out a few weeks, try to get the leverage you want. You're probably not going to get the contract from the team that you're on, but you'll save your legs to get all the money that's on your contract this year and then push it forward to next year where you can sign anywhere you want, like Melvin Gordon going to Denver. So Dalvin Cook at 6.5 ADP. My reservation is that contract situation. If that gets resolved, if he gets signed by Minnesota to a longer term contract by the time the season kicks off, and I'm recording this video on August 26th. So if sometime between now and kickoff, he gets signed, throw that out the window, draft Dalvin Cook with all sorts of confidence. But if not, I'm going to take one of the guys that's right behind him at ADP of 7, 8, 9. That's just the way that I'm going to roll. I suggest that you do too. The next player on this do not draft list is DeAndre Hopkins for me, who right now has an ADP of 18.5. We're going to see an absolutely massive volume drop going from Houston to Arizona. You're not going to see 172 targets this season in the Cardinal offense from DeAndre Hopkins. Yes, his ADP has fallen from where it was last year, but not by all that much. He's still being drafted right in the middle of the second round. I'd much rather have somebody like Travis Kelce, somebody like Kittle, or I'm going to wait and get a wide receiver in round 3 that I think should have as many, if not more targets than DeAndre Hopkins does in 2020. This is just the issue with me right now. It's all about situation. I believe that DeAndre Hopkins is one of the top 3 most talented wide receivers in the NFL. But the situation and the volume that he's going to get in this offense don't merit the ADP that he's currently at. He's living off past reputation based on where he's being drafted. Still an amazing player, still an amazing athlete. but the price right now to draft him is a little bit higher than what I think it should be. So for me, he's a fade at the price. Todd Gurley in the 3rd round with an ADP of 32.2. They came out yesterday and basically said, well, we want him to have somewhere between 15 and 25 touches a game. Okay, that's awesome, but that's a really flippin' wide range, coach. That's also pretty much the range that Devonta Freeman was at last year. Atlanta is a pass-first offense, and it's an offense or a team that ends up playing from behind a lot, and there's just not all that much volume on the ground. Also, we have the degenerative knee situation with Todd Gurley. I don't see the upside here. There's other players in that range that do have the potential for top 5 upside at the position, top 7 upside at the position. I just don't see that out of Todd Gurley. He's being drafted as like the running back 19 right now. I don't see very many paths to him ending the season as a top 12 running back, let alone ending with like a 1,200, 1,300 yard season with 12 touchdowns, which would propel him into the top 6 or 7 at the position. So you're drafting a guy with an okay floor, I guess, but like there's absolutely no ceiling here. But there are the other players around him, guys like Jonathan Taylor being drafted in the same range, guys like James Conner being drafted barely ahead of him, that I think have much better upside with similar floor. So if you're just going to draft a floor player for the sake of having a floor player, and 2 years ago he was the fantasy MVP, I'm just not feeling it. So in round 3, I'm going to pass on Todd Gurley. I'm going to look elsewhere. Uncle Lenny coming in round 4 at 38.2. Pretty much everybody's do not draft, and for good reason. Now, if Leonard Fournette falls to like the late fourth round by the time season kicks off, I'm probably going to be picking him in more of my best ball drafts, because the floor and the ceiling will match his actual price. The players that will be being drafted around him will have similar ceilings, or, you know, not as high a ceiling with similar floors. Fournette should score more touchdowns this year than he did before if he's getting the same usage, but I definitely don't see the pass game usage remaining around the same levels. With Jacksonville probably going to be throwing a lot more this season. That defense is going to be absolutely horrible with all the trades that they've pulled off and talent that they've lost on that defense. They also brought in a coach who likes to throw to his running backs, but he also brought his little pet project, Chris Thompson, with him, and Chris Thompson carries like a round 18 ADP. I'd much rather have Chris Thompson as a round 18 draft pick than Leonard Fournette as a round 4 draft pick. There's a lot of reasons to not like this. He has never been an efficient runner. The team is ready to get rid of him and move him out the door to somewhere else. There's no reason for them to put a lot of stock in him, plus the new offensive system and all the pass game options that they have. Just not a situation that I want to buy into here in round 4. I know it's not unique. Everybody's on the don't draft Leonard Fournette train, but he still has an ADP in the high 4th round. I'm fading him there and picking somebody else. The next round is a lot tougher. The 5th round has an awful lot of talent up and down. And Courtland Sutton is somebody that I think is a very good player. And I think he's going to have a tremendous season. But when I look at the other players in the 5th round that are being drafted behind him, guys like Tyler Lockett, Zach Ertz has somehow fallen into the 5th round with his ADP and the fact that he's going to catch 90 balls this year as a premium tight end that you can get in the 5th round as opposed to playing in the 2nd round for Kelsey or Kittle. You're getting somebody that's 3 rounds cheaper as opposed to Courtland Sutton, who I'd probably rather draft Marquise Brown from the Ravens if I had that high to mid 5th round pick. I'm going to take all of those guys ahead of Courtland Sutton. So for me, at his ADP, he's a do not draft. I'm sure that this one's going to be lovely. People are going to love that one, right? I know that the comments on YouTube are going to just go crazy for that one. And this next pick in the 6th round, AJ Green. Now, if AJ Green had gone through camp completely healthy and his ADP price was the 6th round where it is right now, going 69.7, I would think that that would be pretty nice. But I tend to stay away from players that have hamstring issues in camp. The price, if he didn't have that hamstring, would be fine. I'd be right on board to draft AJ Green, but this hamstring issue that he's been dealing with in camp, even if he comes back from it, from now until the beginning of the season, hamstring issues don't just disappear. They tend to linger for weeks and weeks and weeks. There's other places that we can go in this round. Previous health concerns were already baked into his ADP, but now we've got this additional one that he's already struggling with in camp this year. For me, he's a no-go. Even in the 6th round, AJ Green is somebody that I'm going to pass on, where before Before he came down with that injury, I was all right with it. Rob Gronkowski in the 7th, ADP of 83. I'm not buying. And I'm not buying for multiple reasons. There's way too many other options on this offense when it comes to volume. We've got the 2 wide receivers. We've got Evans. We've got Godwin. We have the same issue in 2020 that we had in 2019 when everybody was getting all hyper over OJ Howard. OJ Howard's a beast. Look how big he is. Look how strong he is. Look how fast he is. All these highlights of him running in long touchdowns. But Bruce Arians' system and his scheme have never proved to have a really, really effective fantasy tight end that played in them. And the arguments that were being made last year for OJ Howard was, well, Arians has never really had a tight end like him. I do think that Rob Gronkowski is going to catch some touchdowns this year. He is, in my opinion, the greatest tight end ever to play the game. But at a 7th round ADP, when we have all these cats being drafted in round 11 and later, we can even include Higbee in round 9, Fant, Gesicki, Jonnu Smith, Herndon, who else? Blake Jarwin, one of my favorite draft picks players this season, my most drafted player this season, all going in rounds 11 or later, and should see more targets, catches, and yards than Rob Gronkowski, being drafted 4 to 5 rounds earlier than those dudes. Rob Gronkowski for me is a very easy fade at his 7th round ADP. If he's going in the 10th or 11th, okay, I'm fine. 10th or 11th, I'm fine. But he's not. Rob Gronkowski is going off name and narrative. Oh, he's playing with Tom Brady again. He's coming back. He's rested. He's in better shape. He's not injured anymore. He's not in a system that accentuates tight ends. At best, he's 3rd or 4th on that team in terms of target market share. I'm just not seeing it. You know, I don't think they're going to play as fast as they did with Brady as they did with Jameis Winston at quarterback. They're not going to take as many shots downfield. Rob Gronkowski still has to deal with OJ Howard, even if they run 2 tight ends. I'm just not buying it, guys. In the 7th round, he is an easy fade for me. In the 8th round, Jordan Howard is kind of coming off boards at the 92nd overall pick. My issues here, Jordan Howard's a 2-down back. He's not going to get a lot of targets. He never has garnered a lot of usage in the passing game. He's never going to garner a lot of usage in the passing game. So if he's playing for a team that's going to be playing from ahead a lot of weeks, then great. Go ahead. Draft Jordan Howard. Issue is he's not. He's playing for the Miami flippin' Dolphins. We're going to be playing from behind most every week, which means that based on game script and game flow, he is going to be scripted right out of pretty much every single game. Anytime they're in a passing situation, 2-minute drill, 3rd down, playing from behind by greater than 7 points, Jordan Howard will not be the back that is going to get the majority of snaps on this team. So yeah, are you paying a high price for him? No, not in the 8th round, but there are guys that have way better paths to upside being drafted in the 8th, 9th, and 10th round at running back. We've spoken about more than a few of them on other videos, and I'm just not seeing with Jordan Howard. I want somebody in this range that is either going to be involved on the passing game or is already going to have a carved out role in their offense, maybe a part-time guy, right? If you're going to say Jordan Howard is the lead back in this Miami Dolphins offense, sure, I get that, but being the lead back for Miami when you're not involved in the passing game at all is not as valuable as being a secondary back, a 40% of the snap back for another team, when you're also going to see a good amount of chunk, maybe 10% of the passing targets that team has in their market share of targets, as well as if the guy in front of you gets hurt, you have a path to number 1 role in that offense with 70% of the snaps, 20 plus touches a week. There is no path to that for Jordan Howard. So in the 8th round, he is an easy fade here for me. He's a do not draft as far as I'm concerned. Now, Drew Brees is tough because Drew Brees is still very, very good. He's going to throw for a lot of touchdowns this year, but he's nowhere near throwing for the amount of touchdowns that he used to throw for. He is also not throwing for the amount of yards that he used to throw for. He also is almost impossible to stack with more than one of his receivers, and that is if you draft like Mike Thomas in the 1st round and you want to grab Drew Brees as your QB2, I'm not really against it. But like opportunity cost here in the 9th round is a little bit rough for me to draft Drew Brees unless you have Mike Thomas. So it's a very fine list of teams that I might consider, even consider having Drew Brees on, because his wide receiver 2 or his tight end 1 never really have monster seasons that really affect your path to winning. But if you have Mike Thomas and you say, I'm going to draft Jared Cook and I want to have Drew Brees to have that double stack, I'm not going to tell you no, but I think that there are better options in the 9th round, or even guys that you can draft behind him. And that is kind of similar to the guy that I have as my do not draft in the 10th round, and that's Aaron Rodgers. The state of Wisconsin is going to be really mad at me right now, but Aaron Rodgers, clear Hall of Famer, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, but he's just not one of the best fantasy quarterbacks in the league anymore. Especially considering that you really only have one target that you can pair him with. And judging by the opportunity cost here, with the amount of guys that you can draft behind him. And here's the list of quarterbacks that you can draft behind Drew Brees and behind Aaron Rodgers that have a similar median projection as well as much better upside. Daniel Jones, Ben Roethlisberger, Cam Newton, Jared Goff, all of which have a ADP 2 rounds later than Aaron Rodgers and 3 rounds later than Drew Brees. You can take any one of those guys, pair them with the receivers that you get at their ADP, and have a similar outlook based on median projection. And some of these guys, a couple of them, have a higher ceiling than Aaron Rodgers. I do not see any path to Aaron Rodgers ending the season in 2020 as a top 5 quarterback. But those other guys do have paths that they can take to becoming a top 5 quarterback. So for me, I'm out on Aaron Rodgers. That's my list, guys, 1 through 10. Players that you should not draft. Drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, ring that notifications bell, and go check out another video, which is going to be right here. Bye.
He's a legend.